Well, I call my message today, Christ or Antichrist? Impressing God or man? And the disciples came to Jesus on the Mount of Olives and asked him what would be the signs of the times when all things were coming to an end. And Jesus begins in Mark 13:5 by saying, "Take heed." He's talking to his disciples. He's not talking to the world. He's talking to his own. And he says to them, "Take heed, lest any man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many." The Greek word translated Christ, Christos, is the Hebrew word Messiah or Mashiach. And what is a Messiah? What is a Christ? A Christ is someone who appears at a crisis moment in history where people are desperate for a rescuer. They want a deliverer. They want somebody to come forth and champion their cause and to protect them from the dangers that surround them. And later on in that chapter, in verse 22, he reiterates this idea of many false Christs coming who have the power to deceive. In verse 22, he says, "For false Christ, false messiahs, false deliverers, and false prophets shall rise and shall show signs and wonders to seduce, if possible." And now the KJV says, "if it were possible," but those words, "it were," are added by the translators. In the original, it's "if possible, even the elect." And some people say, well, if you're one of the elect, it's not possible. But Jesus is saying, if possible, to deceive even the elect. And he says, "But take heed. Behold, I have foretold you all these things." Now, if it were not possible for them to be deceived, for the elect to be deceived, then why would he be telling them to take heed? Right. And if you want to say, well, they will take heed so they won't be deceived, okay, let's take heed. If you say, it's not possible for me to fall away because I'm one of the elect, well, I will just say this to you. You need to still take heed to make your calling and your election sure. And so what I want to do is I want us to understand how false messiahs arise, how they come to these positions of prominence, how they are able to deceive people. It's very much about populism. So we're going to talk about populism. Now, Jesus is not a populist. But every false Christ, every false Messiah will be a populist. They'll tap into the mood of a people, and they'll ride it. They will impress those who can be impressed by certain traits, by certain qualities. They'll be what people are looking for, and they'll say, there it is. That's the one we've been waiting for. Someone who is like that. So false Christs impress the impressionable who admire certain traits. But God is also impressed by certain things. There's a difference between what impresses God and what impresses man. And I would just say, I'm going to end on this note, but I'll give it to you right now. Be careful what impresses you. Just be careful what impresses you. Make sure that you're impressed with the things that impress God. Make sure that you admire what God admires. Make sure that you favor the things that He favors. Make sure you delight in what He delights in. God looked at a man by the name of Job, and frankly, Job impressed Him. Have you considered my servant Job? There's nobody like him. He's caught my eye. He's impressed me. Why? Because he fears me. He eschews evil. David caught his eye. Saul didn't. I reject you. You've rejected my word. I found a man who's after my own heart. God saw something in that shepherd boy that not even his father saw. And then we read, the eyes of the Lord search to and fro throughout the whole earth, searching, looking for him whose heart is perfect toward him. Yeah, there are men that impress men, but there are men that impress God. In Isaiah 66:2, we read, to this man will I look, even to him that is poor and of a contrite spirit and trembles at my word. Is God's eyes on architecture? Grand and beautiful church edifices, cathedrals, the Crystal Cathedral, is that what God's looking at? No, all these things I've made. But I'm going to look to this one. This impresses me. A man who has a poor and a contrite spirit and who trembles at my word. And I will say you could take all these things that I just mentioned and roll them all up into one and find this one impressive man called Jesus Christ, who feared God, who loved righteousness and hated iniquity, and who was anointed with the oil of gladness above his fellows, who had a heart after God, the son of David, who was a greater one than David himself, who was meek and lowly of heart, and trembled at God's word, who had a heart that was perfect toward God in such a way that God showed himself strong on his behalf again and again. Yes, Jesus, the Son, the true Messiah, impressed the Father so much so that the Father had to break forth even at the Jordan River and say, this is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased. He hadn't even begun his ministry yet. He was pleased by the way he was as a child, as a young man, all through his 20s, watching him. And then on the Mount of Transfiguration, he says it again. The voice coming out of the cloud. This is my beloved Son. Hear him. Listen to him. And what we need to understand is that what impresses God doesn't impress man. And what impresses man doesn't impress God. Jesus himself was aware of this. Jesus knew why he was not a favorite of the Pharisees. Oftentimes his disciples had to come to him and say, you just stepped on the Pharisees' toes. They thought you were talking about them. They didn't like what you were saying. There was a time when he spoke about you cannot serve two masters. You can't serve God and mammon. And then in Luke 16:14, we read, and the Pharisees also, who were covetous, heard all these things, and they derided him. And he said unto them, you are they which justify yourselves before men. You're not interested in being right before God. All you care about is being right in the eyes of people. But God knows your hearts. Why? Because God doesn't look at the external. God looks at the heart. For that which is highly esteemed, that which is impressive among men, is abomination in the sight of God. So let's understand this. There is how we appear before men and how we appear before God. There is what men see and there is what God sees. God does not see as man sees. Man looks at the outward appearance. God looks at the heart. Man is easily swayed by the superficial, by the image. It's okay for somebody to be a symbol of what he values. Man measures success by the outward, by results. God measures success by obedience and faithfulness. So we have a problem when we're living for man, living to be admired of men, wanting to impress people, and thinking we're successful if we gain their approval. Our value is not determined by what people think of us, whether that be little or much. The only true standard of our value is our value before God. What does he think of us? Does he say, that one there, my beloved son in whom I am well pleased? Does he say, I know you? Like he said of Job. Does he know us? Does he spot us like he spotted David? That's a man of God. That's a woman of God. I see them in the secret place. They're not doing what they're doing to be seen of men and get their reward from men. No, I know them. That's Joseph in Potiphar's house being faithful to me. In John 1:10, we read of Jesus that he was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. Father knew him, the world knew him not. When people recognize you, when people see worth in you, is that when you're going to be valuable? Or are you going to do what you do unto God because you want to please him in all things, and what he thinks of you is all that matters? It says he came unto his own, and his own received him not. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name. And there was a remnant, but they were a small percentage of the whole nation of Israel that received him as Messiah and recognized him as sent by the Father. And we can ask, how is it that they missed him? He was right there. He was in their midst. How is it that they could not see the Father at work in him? He said, believe me for the work's sake. How is it that they could not hear the Father speaking through him? And I will tell you, he came differently than what they expected.
Yeah.
So we can read a book. I'm not going to mention the name of a book, but you can read a book, and you're saying, oh, I can just envision this being made into a movie. And I can just envision so-and-so playing that part. And then the film comes out, and you go, that's wrong. No, they should not have gotten this role. That person should have gotten it. That person was perfect for this role, and this person was miscast. In the eyes of many in Israel, Jesus was miscast as the Messiah. And yet, the Father sent him into the world, was in total control of everything he said and everything he did. He came in the Father's name. He said, you see me, you see the Father. He said, my doctrine is not mine, but the doctrine of him who sent me. The things that I don't do of myself. It's because the Father has shown me that those things I do. He was the exact representation of God, according to Hebrews chapter 1, the brightness of his glory. And so the Father set the Son as a stone of stumbling and a rock of offense by coming as one who was contrary to the way men wanted him to appear. 1 Peter 2:7, Peter says, unto you therefore which believe, he is precious. See, you're not going to believe, you're not going to be a believer, you're not going to come to Christ unless somehow he is precious. Oh, what you see in Jesus, across the board, in every aspect of his life. You don't pick and choose what parts of Jesus you happen to like and other parts you deny or ignore or neglect. No, across the board, everything I'm seeing about Jesus is impressive to me. Yes, I see the Father in the Son. And because he's precious, I believe upon him. But unto them which be disobedient, the stone which the builders disallowed, rejected, disapproved of, the same is made the head of the corner and a stone of stumbling and a rock of offense, even to them which stumble at the word, being disobedient, whereunto also they were appointed. I'll tell you the wisdom of God. The wisdom of God to weed out those who are disobedient, who glory in things other than the things he glories in, who magnify these things and savor these things that he does not savor. He looks at Peter and he looks beyond Peter to who's speaking through Peter, and he says, get thee behind me, Satan, for you don't savor the things that are of God, Satan. You savor the things that are of men. I'll tell you, deception is possible to anyone who has decided that they are going to be wowed, to be seduced, to be bowled over by those things of man that man would glory in, and not the things that God would glory in. So I want to look at the Jews and what they gloried in, what they admired, what they were impressed by, and how that led them astray. I want to look at the Greeks and what the Greeks looked at and how that led them astray. And then I want to look at the Americans and what the Americans glory in and admire, and how that will lead us astray. So the Jews looked for a Messiah of power. Again and again, they wanted Jesus to validate himself by the miracles he did. But was that enough? Yeah, he did miracles. Yeah, he was approved of God by the miracles he did amongst them. But was that enough? The book of John actually is laying out a case that it didn't matter how many miracles he did. It didn't matter how much they saw of power in him. It's because they couldn't hear. They couldn't hear the Father. His word was not abiding in them, that they did not believe upon the Son. So in John 12:37, we read, but though he had done so many miracles before them, yet they believed not on him. That the saying of Isaiah the prophet might be fulfilled, which he spake, Lord, who has believed our report? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? Therefore they could not believe, because that Isaiah said again, he has blinded their eyes and hardened their heart, that they should not see with their eyes, nor understand with their heart, and be converted, and I should heal them. Who is he? Who is the he that's blinding the eyes? Who is he that's hardening the heart? It's God. He has set Jesus to be a stone of stumbling. He has set Jesus to be a rock of offense. Why? Because those that are going to glory in anything other than the things that God would have us glory in will stumble at the word, will be disobedient. To this they are appointed. Oh, be careful what impresses you. Be careful what you admire. It will lead you astray. It will lead you to acclaim, to approve of a false Messiah, who exemplifies something that you hold very dear. Yes, and there was another idol at work. There was another thing at work in the nation of Israel that became a stumbling block to them, and that was their pride. In John 5:43, Jesus says, I am come in my Father's name, and you receive me not. If another shall come in his own name, him will you receive. And I will tell you, that one who is going to be coming in his own name is going to be the Antichrist, for sure. Yeah. Him you will receive. And then he says, how can you believe, which receive honor one of another, and seek not the honor that comes from God only? In other words, as long as you are going to be glorying in yourselves, as long as you are going to be vying for honor from each other, you're not going to be believing upon me, because I'm all about not glorifying myself. I'm all about glorifying the Father. And I'm saying to you, whatever I'm doing, it's not me that's doing it. It's the Father that's at work in me. So proud people like to glory in what they're doing. They don't want to glorify somebody else. They want to glory in what they're doing. They look at themselves in the mirror. They can't help but admire themselves. And because they're first admiring themselves, they want confirmation and validation from others. You see the beauty in me that I see in me, correct? And yet Jesus says, Don't let your left hand watch your right hand. He says this in the context of people doing religious activity. In Matthew 6:3. But when you do your alms, when you are helping people, when you're doing good, let not thy left hand know what thy right hand is doing. Don't pat yourself on the back. Don't toot your own horn. Don't be impressed by yourself. Don't want your name up in lights. And this became a problem. And Jesus saw it with the Pharisees, with their public prayers and their fastings, that they even would appear to be pious, but they were doing it all to appear a certain way before people because they were walking in the pride of life. And Paul understood it as well. And Paul understood that this was the problem, and it was why so many of his own people, of his own kinsmen, would not submit to the righteousness of God, because submitting to the righteousness of God was to receive a righteousness that was not of oneself, but was of God, simply received through faith in the righteous one, Jesus Christ. And in Romans 9:30, he says, what shall we say then? That the Gentiles, which followed not after righteousness, have attained to righteousness, even the righteousness which is of faith. But Israel, which followed after the law of righteousness, has not attained to the law of righteousness. Wherefore, or why? Because they sought it not by faith, but as it were by the works of the law. For they stumbled at that stumbling stone, as it is written, behold, I lay in Zion a stumbling stone and a rock of offense. And whosoever believeth on him shall not be ashamed. So pride in our own religiosity, pride in our own excellent serving of God, which we don't want to let go of. We don't want to come to a place of brokenness. We don't want to fall upon that rock and be broken and say, in me there dwelleth no good thing. And I thank you, Lord, for your mercy and your grace. Instead of being like the publican standing in the temple and thanking God that he was not like other men, like this publican, the Pharisee congratulated himself on all that he did. And yet what did the publican say? He could not even lift his eyes. Lord, have mercy upon me, a sinner. And this man went to his house and he was just. Why? Because whoso exalts himself will be humbled, and whoso humbles himself will be exalted. Jesus looks at the Pharisees and he sees pride. Religious pride. And proud people do not like others to find fault with them. They hate being reproached, criticized. And this is why they hated Jesus, because they realized oftentimes he was talking about them. John 3:19, Jesus says, and this is the condemnation, that light is come into the world. What does light do? Light reproves darkness. But men love darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil. For everyone that doeth evil hates the light, neither comes to the light, lest his deeds should be reproved. And so I will tell you, if you're a backslapper, if you're a ear tickler, if you're somebody who finds out what people want to hear and tells them that and flatters them, the Antichrist will be a flatterer. And if you want to win friends and influence people, you gotta find out what it is that a person wants to hear and what will boost their ego. Make sure you don't say anything that's going to make them get offended. Jesus, you're not a very good politician. The things that you said were always stepping on people's toes. Yeah, Jesus would not be very popular today. And then there's the Greeks. So the Jews loved displays of power. Many were looking for a Messiah that would come and deliver them from the yoke of governmental oppression, allow them to be self-determining people. What was the ideal of the Greeks? What did the Greeks find impressive? The Greeks found wisdom impressive. The Greeks were also people who were quite militant and warlike. Alexander the Great being the prime example of that. But they prided themselves on their philosophers. And philosophy itself means a love of wisdom. And yet, Paul says, the Greeks by wisdom knew not God. In 1 Corinthians 1:22, he says, for the Jews require a sign, and the Greeks seek after, pursue wisdom. But we preach Christ crucified. Unto the Jews a stumbling block, and unto the Greeks foolishness. Surely this crucified person was not a sage. His what he said was not sublime enough. And the Greeks were also great lovers of beauty. You look at the difference between art in many of the Oriental countries and the art of the Greeks, and you're saying one looks like it's from the Stone Age, and the other is like the statues that the Greeks produced, the lifelike statues, ideal beauty, the architecture, the Parthenon, the Colossus of Rhodes. The Greeks loved harmony, order, beauty. They liked excellence. They liked excellency of speech. They loved great oratory. And Paul understands this. In 1 Corinthians 2:1, when he's talking to the Corinthians, he says, and I, brethren, when I came to you, came not with excellency of speech or of wisdom, declaring unto you the testimony of God. For I determined not to know anything among you save Jesus Christ and him crucified. I didn't want your faith to stand in the wisdom of men. I didn't come to you knowing what those amongst you who gloried in men might be after and wanting to cater to their lusts. And every demagogue, every populist taps into the spirit of a people and says, I am going to personify, exemplify, represent that. What was Hitler's appeal to the German masses? You know, Hitler loved beauty. Hitler loved order. Hitler loves symmetry. Why, you see the spectacles at Nuremberg. People were spellbound, entranced, not only by the visual that he put forth before them, but by his incredible oratorical skills. Why? Because they gloried in that. They wanted order. They wanted persuasive power. They wanted a strong man. They wanted somebody who was going to come to their rescue. And he exemplified so many things that they admired and were impressed by. So let's get on to the American ideal. What is the American ideal? Freedom. Independence. We celebrate July 4th as what? Independence Day. Independence. We're about self-determination, self-expression. And how are we going to be attracted to someone who was entirely dependent on another? How are us freedom-loving people going to find any attraction with one who wore a yoke, who said, I do nothing of myself? I will tell you that if Jesus was running for office in the America of today, he would be, forget about being in second place. He wouldn't even be in second place. He would be so far behind the front runner, I don't even think he'd have 1% of the vote. Jesus was not a populist. He did not tap in to the current mood of his people and ride their emotions to a place of power as their fearless leader. As a matter of fact, John 6:15 says, when Jesus therefore perceived that they would come and take him by force to make him a king, he departed again into a mountain himself alone. I'm getting away from this. Yeah, I know right now you would want me to represent everything that you want me to represent, but I don't. So I'm getting away from you people. I'm gonna get into a mountain by myself alone, but I'm not alone. I'm gonna just keep on looking for those things that please my Father. And I'll tell you, it's easy to get swept up in what others are feeling. Yeah. Whether it's fear, whether it's anger, whether it's pride in who they are and their people. Yeah. But those who are truly submitted to God will not be conformed to the world around them. Like Jesus, they will stand alone. They will not be popular. They will be other than even their own people, so to speak. And because Jesus was after the things of God, not after the things of men, the Son impressed the Father. He was heaven's favorite, even though he was a loser in the eyes of men. Isaiah 53:2 says, he has no form nor comeliness, and when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised and we esteemed him not. And that is not only pertaining to the nation of Israel, that is pertaining to the race of humankind, anyone in it who does not value the things of God more than the things of men. And to this day, around the world, Jesus is as unpopular as ever. And he's becoming more unpopular by the day. And he predicted that in the last days there would be these false Christs who would deceive many before his coming. And although there are many false messiahs and many false prophets and many false Christs, there will be one who comes before the end of all things. There will be one. He will be the Antichrist. He will be opposed to all that Christ stands for. And somehow, this one person will unite every various and different faction. How can that be? How can one man unite every different faction on the earth? And they all are willing to worship him. And I want to look, as we close here, I want to look at 2 Thessalonians 2, starting in verse 3, for what Paul says about this man and his arising. Let no man deceive you. Who's he talking to? The church. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first. And that man of sin, a man, singular, be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he, as God, sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Remember ye not that when I was yet with you, I told you these things. And now you know what withholdeth, that he might be revealed in his time. For the mystery of iniquity does already work. Only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way. And I'm going to just tell you right now, I'm going to continue reading, but I will tell you that that translation there is not in keeping with the original, and I will go into that. So just remember that particular verse. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause, God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. And I think it is very important for us to understand 2 Thessalonians 2:7. For the mystery of iniquity does already work. Only he who now letteth, the word here letteth is the same word previously spoken of withhold. He that is holding things back will continue to hold things back until he be taken out of the way. Now the he being referred to there is the man of, the he being referred to there is not the church. The he being referred to there is the man of sin, the son of perdition, who is going to be revealed. And this phrase, taken out of the way. Let's look at the three words from the Greek. The word taken is the Greek word gnomai. It means to become. That is, to come to pass, to happen, to arise, to appear in history, to come upon the stage of men appearing in public. So, the man of sin is going to gnomai. He is going to appear on the world stage. And then the next part is out of. And out of is from a Greek which means ek, which means from. So this man of sin is going to appear, he is going to arise from, and the word way there is the Greek word mesos, which means the midst. So here's how this would be correctly translated. The mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Paul says in this day, this mystery of law, men do not want to be submitted to the authority of God. They want to be a law to their own selves. And this mystery of iniquity is going to continue to operate in mankind. And he who is now withholding the appearance of the man of sin, the son of perdition, because when he comes, it's the end. He's going to withhold until this mystery of iniquity has so leavened the world, has so captivated the world, is such the spirit of the times, because iniquity or lawlessness will abound, the love of many will wax cold, and out of this climate of hatred for any rule but our own, we will not have this man to rule over us. When this reaches a fever pitch, when personal autonomy becomes the order of the day, when despising of government or rule becomes the order of the day, when self becomes the idol of the day to such an advanced state, in the last days, men shall be lovers of their own selves, lovers of their own pleasures rather than lovers of God. When this is the populism, when this is the spirit of the masses, then arising from their midst will be he, appearing on the stage to have their acclaim and their admiration, and he will impress them because he will embody all that they love and admire. And God will send strong delusion, and God will allow him to do great signs and lying wonders. And God will send this, that all those who did not admire what he admired, who did not love what he loved, who did not take pleasure in righteousness, but who took pleasure in unrighteousness and their own self-rule rather than the kingdom of God being in their hearts. Yes, the Antichrist is the man of lawlessness who wants nothing to do with the rule of God. He will be the product and the epitome of the mystery of lawlessness that is now powerfully at work in the world. He will be the greatest populist of all time. And who is holding back that he might be revealed in his time? God. Why? God is waiting for that time when the world will be so opposed in their hearts to his rule that they are ready to worship one who epitomizes all they hold dear and admire. And let me tell you this. One of the ways in which you can understand that we are in the end times is because what we are seeing across the board is a uniting of all different disparate groups and factions who are uniting under this banner. We are for the oppressed and we are against the oppressor. There is even a name for it now. It's called intersectionality. And it's where one group of people who believe they have been historically oppressed and looks upon another group as being those who have oppressed them, find a shared identity with whatever other group can lay claim to the same oppression. Yes, we understand your oppression because we have our own form of oppression. And the Antichrist will unite all these people who feel victimized, aggrieved, oppressed. And do you know who the greatest oppressor will be? God himself. He will unite everyone because why? This God does not want you to be able to live your life the way you would choose to live it. As a matter of fact, this creator God is not worthy of worship because he's not a creator. He's not so much a creator God as he's an invader God. He's actually invading this planet. He's actually hurting Mother Earth. He's an abuser. He's an angry, jealous God, and he's been trying to usurp us and our self-determination and our autonomy ever since the garden. And the one who's worthy of worship is the serpent. Ah, yes, in the last days they will turn from sound doctrine to myths. The Gnostic myths that have been around for millennia are being revived in this day. Study Gnosticism and you will understand how Lucifer will be worshipped in the last days. And the disciples and the apostles understood it was happening in their day. It was already at work, but it was going to increase. So let's ask a question. Who's blinding? Who's blinding the eyes of those that believe not? Well, according to Paul in 2 Corinthians 4:3, but if our gospel be hid, it is hid to them that are lost, in whom the God of this world has blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine unto them. So who is it who's blinding? Is it God blinding? Or is it Satan who's blinding it? Well, Satan is blinding according to Paul. But God is using Satan. As he always does. He's using Satan. Job 12:16, with him is strength and wisdom. The deceived and the deceiver are his. And if you can be deceived, you will be deceived. And you will be deceived if you are going to be someone who glories in anything but what God glories in, who delights in anything but what God delights in. You may be someone who says, I delight in justice. Well, God delights in justice too, but not at the expense of delighting in mercy. If you are unbalanced in any way, you're going to be prone to gravitating towards someone who exemplifies what you admire most. Yes, the inhabitants of the world will believe that they are doing right and they are virtuous in rising up against the God of heaven. Why? Because he's a bad God. He's a demiurge. He's a lesser God. That's what the Gnostic myths put forth. Higher than him is the one. And the one is deemed to be Satan. And so in the end times, yes, the inhabitants of the world will believe that they do right by making war against the saints who keep the testimony of the Lord Jesus Christ and who obey the commands of God. They will believe that they are rescuing the world with the Messiah at their helm, the Messiah who is the beast. They will be rescuing the world from an evil God. And we will need to say to ourselves, is it possible for me to fall in with that crew? And I will just say to you, be careful. Be careful what impresses you. Make sure that what impresses you are the things that impress God. Humility, righteousness, mercy, kindness. Make sure that you don't allow anywhere in your heart or mind an offense towards God. Jesus came in, and he came in as the Lamb of God, and he bore the blame, and he bore the sin in his own body. And people still want to blame God. They want to blame God for who the Bible reveals him to be. Well, why did God allow people to be killed in the Old Testament, etc.? Why did God allow this? Why did God allow this? I will tell you, there may be many things that you don't understand about the nature of God, but in the end, God is not going to apologize for one thing he ever did. Amen. Because all of his works are done in truth, and he is a rock, and in him there is no iniquity at all. God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. And if you're going to allow any kind of secret animosity or offense towards God to be in your heart, you are going to be open to the allure and the seduction of one who will charge God and blaspheme God in that day. And you'll fall prey to the populist movement that is impressed by the Antichrist. So let us now just take stock and say, Lord, no, I want to bless you at all times. I want your praise to continually be in my mouth. I want to love those things that you love. I don't want to be impressed with anything that impresses man. The things that they highly esteem are abomination in your eyes. I want to be impressed by and admire the things that you call good and beautiful and excellent. So, Father, we thank you and we praise you that we live in a consequential time. We live in a time when multitudes are in the valley of decision. The world is being prepared right now. Things will unfold the way Scripture lays out. Evil seducers will wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. False Christ will arise, deceiving many. The night is going to come. Nothing we do is going to prevent this night from coming upon the earth. But Lord, we can take heed. We can take heed, and we can make our calling and election sure by loving the truth and taking no pleasure in what you call wrong. In Jesus' name, amen. Had a cough. Had a cough. Had to clear my throat after that.